Hey guys, it's Lord of the Pogs. Before we get started, the first thing I want to address is some very constructive criticism I received on why Halloween will never end. The fact of the matter is, I know I sound like Ben Stein teaching high school economics when I speak.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of anyone? The Great Depression.
And that's not the way I talk in real life. I'm actually very comfortable with public speaking. I am fun and engaging. But staring into a camera lens with the light shining in your eyes is not the same as talking to a person. It's just not. It's hard, and it takes a lot of practice. But I want my presence on YouTube to be engaging. I want it to be fun. And that's what I'm shooting for today. The Watcher premiered on Netflix a couple of weeks ago, and it's allegedly based on a true story. When I first heard about it and someone told me what it was, I thought it might be based on the Circleville letters, a 1976 case of residents of Circleville, Ohio, who received letters detailing personal information about their lives and threatened to make that information public. The Watcher is a little bit different, and it's based on a 2018 article Reeves Weideman wrote for the New York Times about a case that occurred in Westfield, New Jersey in the last few years. The miniseries takes a lot of creative license. Derek and Maria Broaddus, who Dean and Nora Brannock were based on, actually had very little involvement in the show, but they did ask that their real names not be used and that the actors cast to portray them not resemble the way they look in real life. The 7-episode miniseries covers the gist of it. After moving into their dream home, they're harassed by letters signed by a stalker. But the finer details were written by creator Ryan Murphy. The real story is interesting, but it's somewhat less hectic than the miniseries. Mitch and Mo were based on a couple living behind 657 Boulevard who kept 2 lawn chairs pointed toward their house oddly close to their property line, but the characters themselves were completely fabricated. Pearl and Jasper were based on Michael Langford, who had diagnosed schizophrenia and lived with his 90-year-old mother, and would go into people's yards and look through their windows, but the characters were written for the show. John Graff was based on the real-life John List, but that murder case has no connection to the Watcher or the Broaddus family. The underground passageway is also entirely fictional. There was no secret tunnel where they saw the Watcher. Also, although the author of the letters actually stated that they had been in the house when they were younger, there is no evidence to suggest that they were ever in the house as an adult. This is all pure dramatic license to add to the threat the family is facing in the show. And to a point, I think the addition of these fictional characters and plot devices helped convey the increased exasperation the Broadduses felt during this ordeal. Now, I've always had an interest in true crime. I've seen all the Robert Stack episodes of Unsolved Mysteries, and I've binged the reboot series on Netflix. So there really is something about a story like this that's based on true events. It's fascinating. But taking a step back, this is a family whose lives were changed forever, and they took a financial hit of almost $500,000. They asked that the Netflix show written about them bear little resemblance to their story. I did find a photograph of the Broaddus family in a Google search while doing my research, but I won't be sharing that here out of respect for their privacy. To wit, Unsolved Mysteries has brought increased attention to a lot of cases and helped them be solved, and the Netflix reboot has brought increased attention to more modern cases to a new generation of viewers. It's my hope that this miniseries will generate enough interest in this case that it too may be solved. Maria and Derek Broaddus purchased 657 Boulevard, Westfield, New Jersey in June 2014, a few blocks from where Maria grew up and 22 miles from New York City. Some residents of Westfield have often compared their town to Mayberry, the setting for the Andy Griffith Show. Westfield consists mainly of well-off families, and in 2014 it was ranked the 30th safest town in America. The house's original owner was Harry Lincoln Russell, a real estate agent and property developer in Westfield who built it in 1905. In 1914, Westfield Mayor William Davies purchased for $1 and died there in 1947, 4 years after his wife. The house went on to their son and daughter-in-law, Francis Davies, who sold it to Dillard and Mary Bird in 1951, again for $1. The house sold 3 more times, to Lawrence and Mary Schaffer for $23,000, to Seth and Floyd Bakes, and to John and Andrea Woods for $370,000 in 1990. The Broadduses decided to renovate before moving in. 3 days after closing and before it was even made public, Derek found the first anonymous typed letter in his mailbox addressed to the new owner. It was friendly and welcomed them to the neighborhood. The Broaduses have never published the full letters, which I think is wise, since it purportedly contains personal information about them. But the first letter, dated June 5th, 2014, reads, in part,
Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. I see already that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. You have children. I have seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? I asked the woods to bring me young blood, and it looks like they listened. Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. I ran from room to room imagining the life with the rich occupants there. And now I watch and wait for the day when the young blood will be mine again. There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. Welcome, my friends. Welcome. Let the party begin.
Derek and Maria wrote an email to previous owners John and Andrea Woods and asked them if they had any idea who the watcher might be, or why they might have said, I asked the Woods to bring me young blood, and it looks like they listened. Andrea responded the next morning and said that a few days before moving out, they had received a letter from the watcher. She said that it had been odd, but in the 23 years living in the house, they had never received anything like it. They assumed it was a prank and threw it away without much thought. The police, however, took the letter seriously. They noted that it had been processed at the sorting facility in Kearney, New Jersey, indicating that it was mailed from not far away. They advised the Broaduses not to tell anyone else about the letter, especially their new neighbors who might be suspects. Michael Langford was considered a suspect but was ruled out due to lack of evidence, including a test of DNA found on the envelopes which revealed that it belonged to a woman, and many people said that he'd be unable to construct a letter like the ones that were written. Michael died in 2020. Police searched the house and found nothing in the walls. As investigations began on the neighbors, it became harder for the Broaduses to keep the story to themselves, and the house developed a spooky reputation. Another house with a similarly spooky reputation lay just 60 miles east on Long Island in Amityville, New York. Media coverage of the Watcher letters didn't help, and some of the locals even accused the Broaduses of cooking up the Watcher themselves to get out of a mortgage they could no longer afford. Some of the neighbors were confused as to why they would continue renovating a home they were no longer moving into, but this theory has been broadly debunked. Police tested the Broaduses' DNA, and it didn't match the DNA found on the envelopes. Once they decided to sell, they were forced to lower the price and even rent the space out for a time. While some potential buyers thought they had stumbled upon the deal of a lifetime, most backed out after the Broaduses shared the Watcher letters in an honest attempt at transparency. They'd reached out to 2 FBI agents, one of whom was the real-life inspiration for Clarice Starling from Silence of the Lambs. They hired the other FBI agent, Robert Lenahan, to perform a threat assessment, who determined that the letters were most likely written by someone who's older based on several old-fashioned writing nuances. The envelope was addressed to M/M Broadus. The salutations included references to the day's weather, like warm and humid, and sunny and cool for a summer day, and there were double spaces between sentences. While he didn't find the watcher's threats credible, Lenihan believed that the typos and grammatical errors indicated that the individual might be erratic. He also noted seething anger towards the wealthy, given that he accused the Broadduses of being lured to 657 Boulevard by greed. The Broadduses also hired a forensic linguist, who noted no noteworthy overlap when he scoured local online forums for similarities in the writing found in the letters, but wondered if the author might watch Game of Thrones, since Jon Snow is one of the Watchers of the Wall. The general contractor arrived one morning to discover that the heavy sign he pounded into the ground had been ripped out during the night. The Broadduses suspected the Watcher was responsible, since he indicated in the letter they were upset that the home was being renovated. This was the only vandalism that took place. 2 weeks after the first letter, on June 18, 2014, another letter was received. It read, in part,
"Welcome again to your new home at 657 Boulevard. The workers have been busy and I have been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have they found what is in the walls yet? In time they will. 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement? Or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Will they sleep in the attic? Or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house. Who am I? I am the Watcher, and have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on, and kindly sold it when I asked them to. I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession. And now you are too, Broaddus family. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. Have a happy moving in day. You know I will be watching."
Derek and Maria grew worried about how much information this person knew about them and their family, including the names of their children and their birth order. It also mentioned one of the kids using an easel on an enclosed porch that's not visible from the street. It got even more creepy when the letter went on to scold them for renovating the house and said they'd been watching the kids. It kept getting worse because the writer then implied that they were going to kidnap the children. The Broadduses said the letters continued getting more alarming, with specific details indicating the family was being closely monitored. After receiving the second letter, Derek and Maria stopped bringing their children to what was supposed to be their new home and instead rented out the house. On July 14, 2014, a third letter was received. It read, in part,
"Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you. I will be patient and wait for this to pass and for you to bring the young blood back to me. 657 Boulevard needs young blood. It needs you. Come back. Let the young blood play again like I once did. Let the young blood sleep in 657 Boulevard. Stop changing it and let it alone."
The renters agreed to stay as long as the Broadduses installed cameras. So they installed a camera system and an alarm system, and even spent some nights crouched outside to see if they could spot who was watching the house. The Broadduses were driven nearly mad by inconclusive police investigations, accusations of forgery, and attempts at finding a buyer. On February 13, 2015, a fourth letter was received. It read, in part,
"To the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife Maria. You wonder who the Watcher is? Turn around, idiots. Maybe you even spoke to me, one of the so-called neighbors who has no idea who the watcher could be. Or maybe you do know and are too scared to tell anyone. Good move. I walked by the news trucks when they took over my neighborhood and mocked me, and I watched as you watched from the dark house in an attempt to find me. Telescopes and binoculars are wonderful inventions. 657 Boulevard survived your attempted assault and stood strong with its army of supporters barricading its gates. My soldiers of the Boulevard followed my orders to a T. They carried out their mission and saved the soul of 657 Boulevard with my orders. All hail the Watcher. Maybe a car accident. Maybe a fire. Maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away but makes you feel sick day after day after day after day after day. Maybe the mysterious death of a pet. Loved ones suddenly die. Planes and cars and bicycles crash. Bones break. You are despised by the house, and the Watcher won.
In the summer of 2019, after doing $100,000 worth of renovations, the Broadduses sold their home for $959,000, resulting in a $400,000 loss for a house they never even lived in. They gave the new homeowners a note via their real estate attorney stating, "We wish you nothing but the peace and quiet that we once dreamed of in this house." They also included a photo of the Watcher's handwriting just in case any new letters arrived. To date, none have. The Union County Prosecutor's Office says the investigation is no longer active, but the case is still open. Authorities believe the suspect to be older, female, and someone who lives near 657 Boulevard based on the DNA evidence found on the envelope, and say the only way to solve the case is via confession or a DNA match. The most suspicious suspect was a woman in a car who stopped for an uncomfortable amount of time in front of 657 Boulevard around 11 p.m. one night. Police saw the car and traced it and found that she was in a relationship with a man who liked to play video games as a character called the Watcher. Police tried to interview him several times, but he never appeared. But if the Watcher writes again, the internet will be watching. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider dropping a tip. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit that little bell in the corner to get notifications on more videos like this one.